Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to investigate a ghost, but, not a spooky one. We're talking about the ghost of an empire that kept the spirit of Rome alive for 1,000 years after Rome itself was gone.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a little puzzle. We all learn in school about the fall of the Roman Empire, right? But what if that wasn't the real end of the story? What if it didn't really fall, but just moved?
Well, the answer is pretty simple, actually. While the Western Roman Empire was, basically falling apart, the eastern half, it wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. It became this incredible beacon of civilization, carrying that Roman flame for a whole other millennium. And at the very heart of this amazing empire was a city literally built for greatness, Constantinople. I mean, this place was a fortress, protected by these massive walls and the sea. The guy who founded it, Emperor Constantine, he wanted it to be a new Rome, the brand new, unbeatable center of the entire Roman world. All right, let's dive right in. What was this ghost empire that we call the Byzantine Empire today? And maybe even more interesting, who did the people living there think they were? So, check out this timeline. It shows a pretty wild journey, right? This city starts off as just a small Greek trading post. Then it becomes the absolute jewel of the Roman Empire. And then, bam, after 476 CE, when the West collapses, it's suddenly the last piece of Rome left standing. Okay, and this is super important to remember. The people who lived there, they never ever called themselves Byzantines. That's a name historians made up way, way later. Nope, they proudly called themselves Romans. To them, the empire hadn't fallen at all. It had just, lost a few provinces out west. Now, to really get a handle on their world, we've got to learn some of their lingo. So let's lock in a few keywords, starting with empire. And yeah, this is exactly what the Byzantines had. This huge territory with all sorts of different people, all being ruled from that one single city, Constantinople. Religion was absolutely central to life in the Byzantine Empire. I mean, it was everything. But their version of Christianity, what we now call Eastern Orthodox, was pretty unique. And that uniqueness would, down the line, cause a massive split with the church back in the West. So, one of the biggest arguments inside their church was all about something called idolatry. See, Byzantine artists were making these incredible religious images, mosaics, icons, just beautiful stuff. But some people started to get worried. They thought, hang on, are people starting to worship the artwork itself instead of, God? And that fear of idolatry, it led to this thing called iconoclasm. And this wasn't just some friendly debate, oh no. This was the actual physical destruction of priceless holy art. I mean, just picture it. People literally going into churches and smashing these gorgeous mosaics and paintings. It was a massive, violent conflict that tore the empire apart, not once, but multiple times. Okay, let's shift gears and look at the empire when it was at its absolute peak. We're talking about the reign of one of its greatest, most ambitious, and most controversial rulers ever, Emperor Justinian I. So meet Justinian I. This guy was known as the emperor who never sleeps. Why? Because his work ethic was supposedly incredible. And he had this one massive ambition. He wanted to reconquer all those lost territories in the West and bring the Roman Empire back to its full former glory. And honestly, his list of achievements is just staggering. He created a law book, the Code of Justinian, that was so good, parts of it are still influencing laws today. He built the Hagia Sophia, truly one of the most magnificent buildings in the entire world. He even figured out how to steal the secret of making silk from China. And for a little while anyway, he actually did it. He reconquered huge chunks of the old Roman Empire. But for all that gold and glory, Justinian's time as emperor also showed some deep, really dangerous cracks running right through the foundations of the empire. Remember that fear of idolatry we talked about? Well, it wasn't just some small disagreement. It exploded into these violent periods of iconoclasm. You had priceless art being destroyed, and the whole society was just bitterly divided. You were either on the side that loved icons or the side that wanted to smash them. And then there's this number, 30,000. That's how many people died in a single week during something called the Nika riots. And the cause? Get this. It all started with an argument between fans of rival chariot racing teams. It was basically an ancient sports riot that just spiraled completely out of control and almost burned the entire city to the ground. So the thing you've got to understand here is this wasn't an attack from some outside enemy. This was the city tearing itself apart. The analogy is perfect, really. Just imagine fans of two rival football teams suddenly deciding to team up to destroy their own city. That's the kind of chaos Justinian was dealing with. This really sums up the whole paradox of his rule, doesn't it? On the one hand, you've got these incredible achievements that lasted for centuries, but on the other hand, just devastating disasters. The riots, a horrible plague that wiped out half the city's population, plus all that land he reconquered, it was all lost again pretty soon after he died. It just wasn't sustainable. So after Justinian, the empire started this long, slow decline. It really felt like the walls were closing in, with serious threats popping up from pretty much every direction. Okay, so from the west, you had Germanic and Slavic tribes just constantly pushing at the borders, chipping away bit by bit at their territories in Europe. And at the same time, over in the east, new and powerful forces were on the rise. First, Arab Muslim armies came in and conquered huge areas of Byzantine land. Then, a few centuries later, in the 11th century, a brand new, powerful enemy showed up right on their doorstep, the Seljuk Turks. And this part is just wild. At the exact moment they needed allies the most, the entire Christian world split right in two. It was called the Great Schism of 1054, and it was basically a huge fight over power, like who's the real boss, the Pope in Rome or the Patriarch in Constantinople. They had big disagreements over religious beliefs too, so they just officially broke up, leaving the Byzantines totally and dangerously isolated. So by the time we get to the end of the 11th century, the situation is looking pretty grim. The once mighty empire, that ghost of Rome we talked about, was now completely backed into a corner, with enemies on every side. And this desperate situation is what sets the stage for a massive turning point in history. You've got the Byzantines totally surrounded, weakened from the inside, and their old friends in the West are now basically religious rivals. They're about to send out a desperate call for help, a call that's going to unleash the Crusades and change the world forever. Which just leaves us with one last big question. How could they possibly survive?